Hi, morning, Melinda.
Hi, Laura.
Morning, Carl.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, Gary. Your friend Chris told me to say hi to you from Lake Champlain Land Trust.
Oh, cool. Great. How's he doing?
I think he's doing okay. I was just talking to him about how he deals with poison parsnip, and he asked if you were playing volleyball.
Oh, wow. That's been a while since I've done that.
Let's see. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Is there any further comment about the minutes? Hearing none. Do I hear approval of the minutes by signifying aye?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the minutes have been passed.
So we do have a quorum here, I guess. Huh? 4 people.
I'm here now too. I can hear.
Hey.
Hi, Reed. We just passed the minutes. I'll let you take over.
Thanks, Laura. I don't even have the agenda up yet because my work computer wouldn't let me in. Please continue, Laura.
Okay, sure. All right, the next thing on the agenda, let me get back to my, is the Williston Conservation Commission annual report. And let's see, Melinda, what's the status of that? And Reed, you were going to take everyone's comments and make it more into a more formal report. Is that correct?
That's the intent. I added my comments, my section that I was writing over the last few days, but I haven't gone through and wordsmithed. It looked as though at the top of the document there are maybe a few things that haven't been added based on what's been crossed out. So I was sort of waiting until we hit critical mass on paragraphs.
Yeah, I actually just realized that there's a COVID-19 item on there that shouldn't be, because that was in fiscal year 2020, and we're only doing up until we're doing the report for fiscal year 19. So we can take that off. That'll be for next year.
All right.
So you're off the hook for that, Tim, for now.
Only thing I see, Kim,
Okay,
is
but I still need to add like the education stuff.
Save it.
I don't know. Do you guys want to? Do you want to go through it and just kind of take a look at it?
I'd like to make some comments on the ERF section. Melinda, I sent you a note yesterday into your email.
Yeah.
Maybe you can go back to where that was.
Okay.
Right there,
Yep.
this paragraph right here. In the first place, I have not been able to get the balance on June 30th. I've contacted Shirley about that, but I've got no response. Is she working?
She's been busy, and she sometimes takes a while to respond. If you want, I can give her a call today and see if I can get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The balance as of what she sent me for the end of April at that point was 73,248. So it'll be a little, I think the only thing in addition to that will be the interest since the end of April. But those other figures that you've got there, the number of acres and the amount of investment, etc. I have my records, as I noted in my letter, were a little bit, not that far off from that, but a little bit different from that. And I must say, I've been keeping track of those over the years, and I kind of stand by the ones I had. I don't know where those figures came from.
Do your figures include Catamount?
Yep.
Okay.
And also, the select board appropriated, I believe, 70,000 in fiscal year 20, not 60,000.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, my figures are what I sent you yesterday.
Okay.
Kim, the only thing I was missing from my section was the name of your class that worked on the trails prioritization
Environmental.
criteria work.
Sorry, did you hear me? Environmental planning. Or do you want the course number? It's ENV 310A : environmental planning.
I think we'll do environmental planning. Thanks.
And again, Reed, when you go over this, I had taken out an old picture and just put one I had in that had your dad in it from a walk that I gave at Catamount during the last fiscal year. And you're welcome to replace that. It's just something I stuck in there because I had it.
Okay. Melinda, I know you had a couple photos available too.
Yeah, I haven't had time to dig those up, but I can dig up some pictures. I'm wondering if all the Catamount stuff should come out of this report and go into the Catamount Community Forest Management Committee's report. I mean, there's a lot in here about Catamount. There's like 3 paragraphs.
Yeah, we do have to get down to what, 2.5 pages or something, or 2 pages?
And right now it's at 5 pages.
Yeah, I agree. There's no reason for the Catamount information to be in here, except to say maybe that the committee was formed and that I'm the member that's on that committee.
Is this information that needs to not be lost? Does it need to be added to a report for Catamount, or is it duplicative?
It should be taken out of, I think it should be taken out of this and put in the Catamount report.
Would that include the part about the management for field birds, since that's really not part of the Catamount Community Forest, although it is part of Catamount?
Well, yeah, I think it should be in there because
Okay.
it's part of
that's
Catamount.
fine.
I mean, that's my opinion, but if
It's probably good to have everything about Catamount all together in one report.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Who's putting together the report for the Catamount Committee, Laura?
Pardon, Reed?
Who's putting together the report for the Catamount Committee?
We aren't doing that yet. Melinda, that is also probably due at the same time as this report, correct?
Well, maybe a little bit. Well, yeah, the same time, the same hard deadline of like December, but because the committee meets very infrequently, it hasn't been put on the agenda yet.
Okay. I'll start the report by taking out that information and putting it into a new report. For the Catamount Committee to look at.
Okay.
Awesome.
I think there's, oh, and Jude sent me some stuff. I haven't had a chance to put it in the report, but Jude, you sent me some.
On the intern.
On the intern, yeah. So I will
So
make
then we're-
sure and
Yeah.
put it in there.
Then we're quite close. So Kim's
Looks like
COVID-19 thing goes away.
Yep.
Melinda, you're going to add something about Becky Tharp's work. And then I think I'm good. I tried to stay concise with the desired trails prioritization item. And Jude sent you stuff about Adopt a Trail. So
I
we're,
also
we're almost there.
have on my to-do list to add like a little thing about all the different courses that we had, like all the different
Mhm.
student involvement we have. But I wonder if maybe I could see what Jude sent about the intern first, and then I could just like blow that up a little bit so that it's not taking too much space and the intern is included, since that's student involvement also.
Kim, if you can just let me know when you've done that, I'll start doing a comb through of the entire document.
Will do.
And I'll let you know when I've put in the piece about regional conservation partnership. I'm not sure that it's already long, and maybe the contracted work doesn't have to be in the report. It's just, it's already, I think it's going to be longer than it should be. So I don't know.
Yeah, or we could have one sentence around the stuff that I put in for desired trails that just says, in addition,
Yeah.
we contracted for a town-wide assessment of our existing trails.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, water quality, sorry. Never mind, it doesn't go with the trails.
Well, maybe water quality could be added to Eric's piece on the Allenbrook.
Okay.
I mean, the analysis piece.
So we move on, Laura?
Yeah, okay, if there are no further comments, let's move on. And, okay, so the next thing on the agenda is the draft language for the transfer of development rights.
Actually, Laura, it's
Skipped one.
Selection, okay, sorry. Melinda, could you let us know about site selection for the proposed resistant elm planting?
this is actually something, Gary, why don't you talk about this since you know most about it? You're muted.
What was the question again?
So Gary, you're running this project on the DED resistant elm planting.
yeah.
So I was wondering, you asked me about where we were going to plant trees, and I responded that I have no idea. So it's something that maybe
Okay.
WCC can advise on where to plant disease resistant elm. Dutch elm disease.
Yeah, I think
resistant elm.
as far as this year, I think we have approximately 50 to plant this fall. There's some requirements before we even bring them into the state, because there's a disease called, what is it, phytoplasma that affects the leaves of elm, and that phytoplasma is present in the trees that we want to bring into Vermont. So what we have to do first is to check and see if the disease is already here. If it's already here, then there's no problem bringing them in. So if it's not here, then we can't bring those trees here. We'll have to seek some different ones. But so we're about to test for that. We're going to go to near the areas where we think they might be planted, collect leaves, send them off for tests. But other than that, we have 50 trees to plant probably in September. And I asked Melinda, I think we talked about this a long time ago, so we all kind of forgot about what we discussed. So Melinda has inquired, what was it from the Winooski Valley? What were the places you inquired?
Well, I just sent an email to the partners that usually coordinate with the town on stream plantings, and that being the Winooski NRCD and the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program. The Winooski NRCD responded that a planting site that they did a couple of years ago on the Muddy Brook in the Winooski Valley Park District property, the Muddy Brook Wetland Reserve off of Sickland Road might be a good spot to do an interplanting. It wouldn't be an entirely new planting on a new site, but it would just be a supplemental planting on a site that's already been planted.
Mhm.
And so that may make some sense. I actually don't really know anything about what would be an optimal site for elm trees. I think that they can grow in wet areas. So a riparian area would be a good spot for them. But the other thought that I had is, and maybe I should bring up a map just so you guys can see. The other spot I thought was a UVM owned property near the, where is it? It's near the southwest corner of town. I think it's, hold on. Let's put some satellite imagery there. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see because we don't have the town boundaries, but I feel like it's, yeah, where is it? It's right here. UVM owns like a sliver of land around the Muddy Brook.
Huh.
And maybe that would be a good place, but I'm not sure. Maybe it gets really flooded and it wouldn't work. But
Well, elm is, it's kind of an amazing species. It's one that does well in riparian zones as well as drier sites. So I expect it will do well even if it gets flooded for intermittently in the spring and maybe during high flow events.
Yeah.
I was reading up on it while we were talking, Melinda, and it says moist, well-drained soil is fine. So moisture isn't a problem as long as it's drained.
Yeah. Well, that's
if you guys ever, I mean, if you look for elm, it's like everywhere now. I mean, I've been down in the Intervale in Burlington. That's where we're going to do some planting with Burlington, and it's growing all over the place. It does get hit by Dutch elm disease. That's why might be important to, to investigate these Dutch elm disease resistant individuals, or tolerant, I guess they call it. So maybe, and our plan is over multiple years. I think also, Melinda, I see if I remember this correctly. I know is it Bruce Hoare's group also was interested. I know they're interested in some chestnut for some street trees.
Yeah.
I believe he said he was interested in elm as well, because it makes a great street tree, as
Yeah.
you know from the past. And so our plan was to have this 50 or so available this year, and then start some other ones or have them shipped to us next spring that will grow in a nursery situation for a year or two and get them up, maybe 10 feet tall or something. And then those would be available for planting, not only as street trees, but maybe some conserved areas or park type situations.
Well, I wonder if it makes sense then to try to work with Bruce on this first planting, since, and see if he has a place where he can put 50 elm trees.
These are going to be smaller. I got the impression from him that he'd rather have bigger ones, but
okay.
So that's why I was thinking that these, since there's only 50 of them, maybe it'd be a good idea to look into both of these locations. Just plant 20 or 25 in this area along Route 116 that UVM owns. I'll have to investigate the exact property area. I assume you have.
Yeah, maybe talk to Lonnie Raven, I think, if she's still, she's the one that's listed on the parcel. So
okay, I'll ask her about that.
Yeah, because
and then I'll also go down. I assume we would do that on the Williston side of Muddy Brook, down near on Van Sicklen.
Yeah, so it's
yeah, maybe you could pull that up easily here.
Sure. Let me just do this.
Gary, are these 50 solely
Yeah, there it
for
is.
Yes, we have 150 total coming in, and Burlington's gonna take 100 of this first batch, and Williston will get 50.
I know a few of the trees in our neighborhood, remember they had to replace all the trees here. I guess a few of them aren't doing well, so they're going to have to replace them. So that's a possibility too. You could ask,
maybe I can
Bruce.
talk to Bruce. I mean, like I said, I think the longer term plan was to grow up some bigger trees to be used as street trees, and maybe in conservation areas as well, both the American chestnut and elm.
So, so this is the property right here, to the east of the Muddy Brook, right in here.
So that one, does the road access goes on the South Burlington side? Is that correct, Melinda?
Yeah. So you get in from here, and then there's a trail that goes that gets you back in here.
Okay, so you can cross over that pretty easily.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I'll probably take a walk down there and see what it looks like. That sounds, and there's already been some planting done in there?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
On our side of it, on Williston side?
Yeah.
I'll take a look at that. That may be promising for maybe 20, 25 of these. And then I'll talk to Lonnie Raven and see if it's okay to plant in that other location, roughly half of them. If that makes sense to you guys.
So is all of Williston's property on the east side of the river? Of the
yes.
Muddy Brook? Is there a bridge crossing it?
I think so. Yeah, actually, not really sure. Maybe there isn't, in which case you would access it right from the road here.
Yeah, can we dig up property lines for that, Melinda, just so I don't accidentally?
It's just it's the river, Gary.
But I mean, which side of it, how far on the sides can I, like, is it a couple hundred feet?
Yeah, well, I would assume it's, I mean,
Okay.
I can, you know, dig up the parcel, but I would assume it would be right where this,
Yeah. So
this
there's
line of
plenty-
trees is.
Plenty of room to go in through there then.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
I'll take a look at that today and I'll report back to people.
Mhm.
I was wondering if there are any blocks of tree plantings along that brook that did not take that you
I'm not hearing you very well, Eric.
of anything. I thought there was like a few.
I didn't
Any
hear
better?
you, Eric.
You're freezing up.
Yeah, you might want to write it in the chat.
Yeah, Gary.
I'll take a look in there. Yeah.
Along Allen Brook.
Eric says, what about Ellenbrook? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Eric was also asking if there's any plantings that haven't gone well, that haven't taken properly and need to be replanted or enhanced.
Well, the only thing that I've noticed is this planting in here has kind of gotten really
Where's that Taft corner?
chowed down by beavers. There may also be.
How do beavers feel about elm?
Yeah, do they? I don't know. Do they like it?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a harder wood that's harder to chew than many of it. I mean, they love cottonwood, obviously, and other like other species like that. But I don't remember seeing a lot of beaver activity on elm.
You know, I can ask the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would probably have a pretty good handle on how the sites are doing and whether any of them need enhancements. And I could ask them that and what they would recommend.
I think that's good. Either, I mean, we could either use some of those we have now, or that could be a future planting when we get more time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. So unless anyone has any further comment on the elms, we can go on to transfer of development rights.
Okay.
We're a half hour ahead of schedule. Is that okay, Melinda?
It's great.
Okay.
For Melinda, that's great.
And for you guys, I guess. So I kind of went through a bit of this last time. I don't know if you need me to kind of review this information at all. But we talked about transfer of development rights and how it's currently allowed in town, but there's not really very descriptive language in our bylaw, and it's you know, it's pretty vague, pretty general. But transfer of development rights is allowed, and the sending areas are generally designated as the ARZD or conservation areas shown in the town plan. And the receiving areas are areas in the growth center. And that's pretty much all we have for a transfer of development rights program. It has been used very few times in Williston, and I did a little bit of research, and there have been a couple of times, I think, well, actually, a couple of times where the town did not have a transfer of development rights program in place, and for certain developments. I think one of them was a J.L. Davis for Taft Corners, where he actually contributed money towards the purchase of Mud Pond. And there was a condition of approval that stated that if the town ever does develop a transfer of development rights program, that the town would allocate J.L. Davis, I don't know, a certain number of development rights. And so that just seemed kind of interesting that at the time it was contemplated for the future, and these rather strange conditions of approval were put into permanent development agreements or whatever. So it seemed kind of, I don't know, odd. But anyway, it's been used maybe 3 times that I know of, and these are the examples that I can think of, and I don't even know how many TDRs were acquired by Snyder for Finney Crossing. I do know that for Cottonwood Crossing, the developer was considering putting 60 houses into what is now the Allenbrook Nature Trail area. And he was able to transfer those 60 units out of that area and into the growth center. And in return, there's a 14-acre parcel around the Allenbrook confluence that's now protected and owned by the town.
Is that the area on North Williston Road?
Yes, right, where Keystone is. So where Keystone is now, there would have been 60 residential dwellings there.
Right.
Were it not for this transfer development rights. So we kind of went through this last time, looking at looking at the acreage that's available in the ARZD. And so I'm not going to go over this part again unless you want me to. But looking at basically what land is unconstrained in the ARZD and how many TDRs might be available for purchase in the ARZD. And then we also talked about whether some parcels in the RZD ought to be considered as high priority and eligible for as sending areas to purchase TDRs and protect land in the RZD. So basically, I looked at a couple of different programs. South Burlington's and Colchester has a transfer development rights program. I think there's only 4 towns in Vermont that have TDR programs. Colchester actually seems like it has a pretty robust program. And so I took the language that they have in their bylaw around the TDRs, and I took that language and used it. And interestingly, I looked at an old Williston bylaw. The 2004 Williston bylaw has language that's very similar to Colchester's regarding transfer development rights. So it was, for some reason, the 2004 Williston bylaw has very detailed language about TDRs. And for unknown reasons, it was taken out of the new bylaw. And so, anyway, this is I made this flow chart that kind of shows you the components of TDR. There is the creation of a development right. So how do you create a development right? And the proposed bylaw language has this process whereby a landowner who's interested in selling some development rights applies for a discretionary permit as if he's going to develop his land. There's a density calculation to determine how many dwelling units his parcel could support. And then based on that, that would determine the number of development rights he has. And then in that same discretionary permit, on that same site plan, he proposes an area that's going to be protected with this when he creates development rights. So he draws an area on his parcel that the town or some other agency will have an easement over to protect it. The WCC would review this like any other subdivision. The landowner would come in, there would be a site plan review. You'd look at the area proposed for conservation. You would look at the density calculations and review that. And then assuming that the landowner got a permit from the DRB to create these transferable development rights, then there would be an easement agreement between the landowner and the town to hold that protected area in a conservation easement. So what if there's a situation where the landowner has created these transferable development rights, for some reason can't sell them to anybody, or maybe he decides, well, you know, I don't think I want to do this after, you know, maybe he tries to sell them, can't sell them, or he changes his mind before these development rights have been transferred. He then would have an opportunity to revoke this agreement and like sort of undo the creation of these development rights up until they actually get transferred to another developer. So
Is there any limitation on reapplying, Linda?
You mean like if he wants to go ahead and do it later?
Yeah, like what if, you know, what if a parent did this and then their offspring inherited that property and then they wanted to do it and it had been revoked in between?
Yeah.
Something like that.
You know, yeah, that's a question, and it could be, you know, similar to anybody who applies for a permit. If you apply and then withdraw, you can always apply again.
Yeah, I think that's the way it should be. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think that is more, if I was a landowner, it's more enticing that I could kind of say, okay, these are some areas where I might consider it, but then be able to pull back on that later. If you have to be 100% committed right from the beginning, you're probably not going to get as many people that would be willing to consider it.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking, that it would inhibit people from being willing to try it.
Right. Yeah, I think it's great. And then, you know, and also as a landowner, maybe you don't want to support a certain project that's considering buying your development rights. So then you say, okay, I'm going to pull them out for now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, can somebody explain to me, when you apply for a discretionary permit, I guess someone goes and looks at the land, and like, is there a perk test done to make sure that the land is actually okay to develop? Because is there a chance that someone could sell development rights for land that would not be developed anyway? Is that a possibility?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would want to, at least have some preliminary investigation of soils, just to, you know, make sure that it's not constrained in that way.
Soils and slopes we can do without having to visit the parcel, right, Melinda?
Yeah, you know, sort of, you can do like a desktop type review for that kind of stuff.
Just to make sure somebody's not trying to transfer development rights for a cliff, for instance.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's a good idea, Laura, to have something in there. In my opinion, it should be a developable piece that they're doing the transfer of development rights for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking of is there's a lot next to our house that no one can develop on. It's like wood. It just looks like woods. Yep, it could be another lot where a house could go up, but it's on ledge, and you know, perk test would fail. But it looks like it would look enticing to
Mhm.
sell a development right for that.
Mhm.
So Melinda, if the town purchases the development rights from a landowner, that's not tied into a specific receiving area, that's just kind of sitting there in the town's bank of development rights that to be sold later to a receiving area. Is that the idea?
That's the idea. Yeah. So yeah, there's the idea that rather than having a private landowner sort of sit here with these development rights and hoping that he can sell them someday, the town potentially could buy development rights and hold them, kind of bank them, and then sell those to developers.
So in that scenario that you presented where the person who sold the development rights changes his mind, he would have the option of buying them back from the town. He'd have to pay the town the development rights back.
I think that in this scenario I envisioned, he would only have the option of revoking it before any transfer occurred. So if the town bought these development rights, then it would become irrevocable once the town purchased it.
And that I see that as being a good thing because it allows the town to basically take a homeowner up on the potential of preserving certain areas depending on how they align with our objectives for the town.
An interesting, I think that's interesting, but another piece that's interesting to me is that how do you establish the cost of the development rights?
Yeah, that was my question too.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that you know, might be through an appraisal, like similar to how the town purchases development rights now. You know, we get an appraisal done kind of before
like a fair
and
market
after.
value.
Yeah, like what's the land worth with these development rights? What is the land worth without these development rights? And kind of go through it that way. So I imagine that it would be some kind of similar process. I know in South Burlington, they've actually had quite a few TDRs change hands, and the prices have fluctuated dramatically. So
I mean, land trusts must deal with this question somewhat routinely, right? Because this is something that there is like a major component of their work. Could we reach out to a land trust and figure out like if they have, I'm assuming that an organization like VLT would have like, this is our process for how we do it every time and ensuring that it's fair, or maybe I'm wrong and it's super ad hoc, but could we see if there's some standard protocol that already exists that like a trusted partner is using?
I mean, to the best of my knowledge, I believe it's through appraisal. I mean, I know that every single transaction that we've done with the Vermont Land Trust has involved getting appraisals done to assess the fair market value. So, yeah, I mean, I could, but I could definitely reach out to VLT and just, ask them about this too.
Is the question before us whether this is a desirable enough change to try to draft language?
Well, I did actually draft some language for the bylaw, that is.
Of course you did, Linda.
And but yeah, we're like right now we're sort of in the preliminary stages of kind of looking at this, and and right now the Planning Commission is pretty busy with open space and growth and development survey in Williston, and so this, I imagine it will take a bit of time to kind of go through this and look, have the Planning Commission look at it and figure out if, and do public outreach around it and all that.
So the Planning Commission hasn't seen it yet?
No.
How about your office? What's the response in the planning office?
I've talked with Matt quite a bit, and he and I kind of batted around ideas. I've also chatted with the Regional Conservation Partnership, well, more specifically with Paul Connor from South Burlington. He talked a little bit about what the process has been like in South Burlington. I want to talk to him a little bit more, get more information. I would also like to talk to Sarah Had, from the Director of Planning from Colchester, to talk about how it's worked there, to get more of a sense of the pros and cons of having such a program. So yeah, I mean, I think Matt and I both agree that it would be a really, great thing for Williston to have. And it is also in our most recent town plan as a goal to strengthen the transfer of development rights program in Williston. The question is just, more mechanics of like how to best do that, how to make it more airtight.
Well, my favorite part about this is the idea that the town can purchase them so that when they're available, it's not tied to a particular development needing to be in the market for them. So that if there are areas that we want to preserve more land to meet our goals, then we can do that when the TDRs are available, not when there's a development that needs them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if we bought development rights to someplace, the landowner still owns the land, but we control somewhat what can be done on it, because I guess it then, in my opinion, it then becomes a conserved piece of land in some ways.
Yeah.
And then do we just continue to own those development rights forever then? Kind of like a good simple conservation way.
So,
well, we can then sell them. Yeah.
Right. So there's a couple of different threads in this process, and one is the development rights and who owns the development rights. So the idea is we leverage the development rights, sell them to a developer who needs them in a development in the growth center. But the conservation and the protection of that property remains forever.
Yeah.
Like either the town or some third party holds a conservation easement over that property.
So that sounds really interesting to me, because it's a way of accomplishing conservation without us really paying for it in the long run.
Yeah.
And there are so many people who are struggling with tax burdens, especially in, we've had people come over and over who need to sell their land to reduce their tax burden or to pay off back taxes. And this gives an opportunity to have value out of that land.
One other quick question, Melinda, do you have a sense in other towns what they charge for development rights per acre type thing? I mean, is it reasonable, or is it enough to help like Reed says?
So in other towns, or at least in South Burlington, the transfer of development rights has really been a private transaction. Like the town has not banked these development rights to the best of my knowledge. And the prices have fluctuated greatly, like anywhere from, I don't know, I want to say like $5,000 to $20,000 with the average being around $12,000
Per acre.
an acre, which seems really steep. And I think, I think there's a lot of different ways that the town could assess the price of TDR, but it's definitely something that needs to be researched and thoughtfully considered.
So if the if a developer wanted to buy development rights from the town's bank of development rights, I presume the town would have discretion about whether they wanted to sell it to that developer, right? I mean, if the town thought, well, this would, if he bought these development rights, this would increase density beyond what we think is appropriate for that particular area, the town could not sell them, right? The town would have that discretion, or would?
Well, so the bylaw has limits on the maximum density, and the developer needs to meet those requirements regardless. So, for example, in certain zoning districts, the density can be increased up to 10 dwelling units per acre. In others, it's like 15. So that would be regulated by the bylaw, and it wouldn't be like I mean, it'd have to be regulated by the bylaw. And if a developer was proposing more than the maximum, then that wouldn't be allowed.
Well, why couldn't the developer get the maximum without buying development rights?
Because they can only, so the bylaw has, in chapter 19, there's the maximum allowed without TDR, and then if you have a TDR, it increases. You basically get a density bonus.
I see.
So you can increase your density.
So that's all in the bylaws, and without
Yes.
the development rights, he could only build up to the allowable level without the development rights.
Yeah, and it's either the bonus, you get the bonus either through a TDR, or another way of getting the bonus is through if you have like greater than 30% of your development is affordable, affordable housing, then you also get a bonus. Like, for example, for the Catamount development, the proposed development is getting a density, or is proposing a density bonus because of they're including more than 30% affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
So, Carl, I guess I want to follow up on your question. So it sounds like if landowners just kind of put up their land for sale of development rights, they might have a choice of not giving them to a certain project if they revoke them. But it sounds like if the town buys the development rights, as long as the developer meets the guideline or meets the rules of the bylaws, then we kind of have to sell them to them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that the town could not.
Not a good precedent.
It's not. Yeah, it's not good policy to just sort of be discriminate about who you know. I think it would have to be fair in selling the development rights to anybody who meets the standards.
And you don't want those limits to be set too low, because you do want to encourage the higher density in the areas that the town is prepared to support it. But you don't want to set them too high, because you don't want unintended consequences.
Mm-hmm. So I guess this is just a thought I'm having, and not sure if it makes sense, but the price of the development right has to make sense and be more than what, for example, if there's some farmland that the people that own the land want to get a conservation easement on, if they did that, they would get, what, 30% of that back from their taxes? Is that correct? I mean, how does that play in? What one's better than another? It's just something I'm thinking about.
Like the working value of the land?
Right.
Oh, you
And the
mean
tax
current use? Are you
implications?
talking about current use, Laura?
I think I must be talking about current use.
Yeah. I think,
The whole tax implication and how it works compared to current use, that's something that I feel like I don't know enough about to even discuss it.
I think that you can still be in current use if your property is conserved. I'm not sure about that, but I think that I don't think there's anything preventing you from still.
I think
being in
unless
current use.
unless the conserved land requirements differ from what you have in your current use management plan, which might be possible. I mean, for some reason, the conservation may say, "Oh, you can't log it as much as you know." They might have different guidelines.
But I think that the town could be able to control those guidelines to a certain, to a large extent.
We could
Like,
modify the current use management plan to some extent.
Because you
Okay.
do want to make it very advantageous, right? For otherwise people won't go into the program if they have better options, either through current use or continuing to work the land to get value out of it.
Yeah. Thanks for putting that in a way that I couldn't read.
That is a tricky one, the current use piece, because under current use, the land probably can't be developed either. So how do you then figure out what the development right value is?
I'm sorry, you're talking about current use and
Well, I was
what
just saying, if you have a piece of land that's under current use, if you stay in current use, you can't develop the land.
right.
So then the value of the development rights might be different than if it wasn't in current use.
Mm.
You know, it seems like it might get a little tricky there.
Well,
Yeah.
if they were to develop it themselves, though, they would come out of current use. They might pay a penalty,
Yeah.
depending on the terms of coming out of it, and
Yeah.
then they would develop it, and they would have the same benefit. So I think it's the same as if they were to develop themselves. So they're going to sell the TDRs, and they probably have to come out of current use.
Okay.
I could ask that question of Vermont Land Trust. That's, it's a good question, and maybe they have.
Ethan Tapper might even know that as well.
Right, maybe. Yeah.
Or maybe there can be some, I don't know whether there's ways to make it so that it's a get out of jail card if you have it in current use, but you want to make it permanently conserved by transferring the development rights, that you're not penalized for exiting current use to do that.
Well, actually, so just on that topic, the town recently went through this, and where we purchased Catamount because it was, what was it? Oh, no, that was something else. Never mind. But
These are the sorts of questions we need help from outside expertise on.
Well, when the town purchased Catamount, we withdrew from current use, but we did not pay a penalty because it was conserved.
Yeah, you weren't withdrawing from current use in order to develop the land. You were withdrawing to change the way that it was conserved.
Yeah, right. And the same went for, I know when Steve Page donated his 17 acres, he had to withdraw from current use because his remaining property was no longer, it was under the acreage that whereby he would have been qualified. So he then had to put his remaining acreage in a conservation easement to avoid paying the penalty.
Okay, so it sounds plausible that this could work the same way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you say you had a property in current use and you sold it, and the new owner had no desire to develop it, but they weren't going to keep it in current use, you would still pay the penalty of withdrawing,
Yes.
unless you're enrolling it in conservation easement.
Right. Yep.
So it's not like, oh, if you develop it, then you pay a penalty.
No,
if
it's when,
not protected, you pay a penalty.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Melinda, what do you want from us out of this related to the transfer of development rights?
Just thoughts and discussion at this point, and suggestions and
I think we've had some good discussion.
so forth. Yeah. Mhm.
Got a new question about it. Supposing the town decides to purchase development rights on one or many properties, where's the money going to come from? What is it? Is it going to come out of the ERF, or is there going to be a separate pot for purchasing TDRs?
It would come out of the ERF because that's where the money
Conservation
comes to,
funding.
yeah, to purchase, like the town has purchased development rights out of that fund. So I would imagine this would be the same, purchase development rights. But only the difference being that the town could be reimbursed when it sells those development rights.
Mhm.
Well, if it is coming out of ERF, are we, the Conservation Commission, going to have any say as to whether or not we buy the development rights?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it would work the same way as any purchase of development rights that the that the town's done in the past, that the conservation weighs in on it, makes a recommendation. That would involve, reviewing a site plan and
Who signs the checks from the
everything.
ERF? Is it the select board who has to ultimately approve a purchase out of the ERF?
yeah.
Okay.
I think an important piece of that somewhere maybe that needs to be in the bylaws is that if the money comes out of the ERF, it has to be returned to the ERF.
Mhm.
Yeah, any
Well,
sale of TDRs.
Yeah, I don't think that would be in the bylaw, but it would be, it would be in the ERF policy.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I could
But
see
that's
the town
definitely
saying,
something
oh,
important.
money coming in, let's do something else with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want that money slipping away. We're tying that money up in order to protect land. And if we can, it's like doing a transfer of risk. The town is basically purchasing that risk that it's going to be developed and then selling it later.
Yep. Yeah, so I think that, it's important to note that any purchase of development rights that the town would do under this program would be the same as any other time that the town has purchased development rights. For example, for the Isham farm, for the Bruce farm, for the Johnson farm, for Conants, any of those examples where the town wasn't purchasing property, but it was purchasing development rights.
Well, supposing, it's from all I've heard so far, it looks to me like your step 2 here, the town purchasing development rights, could be skipped, that the sending owner who wants to sell the development rights could, the town could hold an easement, but there would be no sale. There could be no sale until the receiving person buys the development rights directly from the seller of the development rights. Is that true? Is it?
Yeah, that could be an option. Yeah, and
if that were the case, there would be no in and out of the environmental reserve fund.
Right. So
it's
the town always has the decision about whether it wants to buy development rights, and the town, even though like the landowner may want to sell those development rights to the town, well, if the town doesn't want to buy them, then, you know, doesn't
Yeah.
have to buy them.
Or if we're using the environmental reserve fund, it could well be that the town can't buy them because.
Right.
Right. This year we wouldn't have had the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, this particular point in time we're very low on the environmental reserve fund.
Right. It's only, yeah, so the town can always make that choice. The benefit of the town buying development rights is that it would be more of an incentive for landowners to want to participate.
To want to what?
To want to participate in the program.
Mhm.
Yeah, that they don't have to wait for a development to be looking
Yeah.
for them.
That's right.
Right.
Mhm.
So,
I think the way you've laid it out on this, on the thing that we've been looking at all morning is really simple and straightforward.
yeah, so there's various, you know, it's what's important to note is that it's important that this process be documented throughout. And so the final, you have the deed of transfer, you have the creation of the TDR, which involves an easement agreement. You have a deed of transfer that's signed by the buyer of the TDR and the seller of the TDRs. And then you have finally a document of attachment that goes to the parcel which TDRs have been transferred to, so that the town keeps track of what parcels have sent TDRs and what parcels have received TDRs. And that's required by Vermont statute, that the town have this documentation and have a map that also accompanies it.
I think my only recommendation, Melinda, as you look toward engaging the planning commission down the road here, is that like a flow style diagram might be an easier way to get people up to speed on how the process might flow, seeing that TDRs could be transferred to the town and then from the town to a development,
Yeah.
or straight from a seller to a development.
Mhm.
And then maybe just showing the different documentation off the side of that flow, saying that this
Yeah.
is when these different pieces of documentation would be issued. So I think
Okay.
that might help be more digestible. But what you've put out here, as Carl said, is it's very straightforward once you understand what you're talking about. But I think a visual might be a faster way to get people up to speed.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I agree. And then finally, this is, we kind of already discussed this stuff here, but I don't know if you at this point want to take a look at the language, or if you want to save that, or if you want to review that on your own and come back with questions. But basically, I've done a whole bunch in chapter 19, really starting from this transfer development rights. That's the main thing. So,
I'd
so I
prefer
don't know.
to read it and to have time to read through it slowly.
Yeah.
Especially after this discussion, we'll have new ideas. When I read through that last night, the only thing that I thought about was it said sending areas are from high priority parcels. And that's fine. I just saw that there were constraints as far as the receiving end, but not as far as the sending end. And I just wanted to make sure, going back to whether a developer could take, you know, transfer rights from a piece of land that couldn't be developed to one that could. That's all.
So there is, the landowner would need to apply to the DRB to have these development rights created, and that would involve a constraints analysis.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right.
Thanks for all your work on this, Melinda. This is looking really good. And you can tell from the conversation that there's a lot of good things that could come out of this, and just a few concerns about the management of it.
Yeah, I will see if, maybe not at the next meeting, but at a future meeting, I'll see if I can come back with some more thoughts and recommendations from other towns that have done this, as well as maybe the land trust, will have some advice.
Yeah, thank you. This is actually a pretty
Sure.
exciting way to conserve land.
Okay.
All right, so unless anyone has anything else, we can move on to updates. And the first is the Catamount Forest Management Plan. And I mean, Melinda, I can just start by saying that the select board met and approved the Catamount Forest Management Plan. And also, I wanted to thank Kim for the survey that she put out. I think all that outreach made it a very easy process. The select board could see that we had really worked on outreach, that there, anything that had come up had been addressed by the forester or through staff. And so it went very smoothly.
Woohoo!
Is there anything else, Melinda, that you wanted to add to that?
You and Ethan did a very nice job in presenting it. So that was also, it was great. And it helped a lot in getting it approved. So thank you.
Oh, well, Ethan
yeah.
was, yeah, he's so
Right.
good at.
Yeah. So that, yeah, the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant has finally been executed. Whoopee, Yahoo, which means that we are getting $200,000 to go back into the ERF.
I was wondering when I saw that on the agenda. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And so that'll be wrapped up pretty soon, I think. So anyway, yeah, that's the piece of news that I have.
Why is ERF getting that money?
It was borrowed
Because-
from ERF.
Borrowed it from the ERF.
Yeah. So the select board, when we purchased Catamount, they put in $200,000 into the ERF for that year.
Yeah.
And then it got taken out to pay for Catamount. So now it's getting reimbursed.
But stays in ERF, correct?
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the money came out of the ERF to
Right.
cover that, to front for that pending grant. So.
But it was above
Right.
the amount that came out of the ERF. That was like what we allocated to spending on Catamount, Carl. So we had allocated what, 400?
Yeah. So in total,
This was an additional 2.
yeah, right. Yeah. And
We spent $1 million on Catamount.
right, but complicated. So we spent $600,000. We were granted $400,000 from a U.S. Forest Service grant.
Right.
So we're going to get back $200,000 from the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. So after we get reimbursed, we will have spent $400,000 out of the ERF.
What a steal.
Yeah.
Say it again, Reed, for the people in the back.
Yeah.
That's less than a house on North Williston Road,
Yeah, it is a steal for sure.
But my tax dollars.
So the planning office has put out a growth and development survey. So far, we've received over 130 responses, which is more than I had anticipated. There's been some very interesting responses, and they will be presented at the August 18th Planning Commission meeting. So I encourage everybody to go to that. And I imagine there's going to be probably a lot of members of the public attending that meeting and talking
What's that
about
date
growth
again,
and development.
Melinda?
August 18th,
Okay.
7 p.m. on Zoom. Yeah, and then the last thing I wanted to mention is that Congressman Welch is hosting a press conference at Catamount today to talk about the refunding of the Great American Outdoor Act and the refunding of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And so that's pretty exciting. They're trying to keep the event small, so I'm not inviting people to attend, but but I'm just letting you know that it's happening today at noon.
That's great.
That is great.
Yeah.
And what prompted it to happen at Catamount?
So I think that was Congressman Welch's Congressman Welch's first choice of areas in Vermont to have the press conference at. And the time that he asked, we hadn't signed the grant agreement yet. So it was like, I'm not sure if this is the best place, but then the grant agreement got signed and that was where they wanted to have it. So that's pretty great.
It is.
So is it going to be online or on TV?
No, it'll probably be broadcast on some TV station, maybe tonight. So, so check it out.
Maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say local news might have it.
Local news, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Vermont Digger, maybe, who knows?
Ellie really wants to participate in this meeting by pressing.
Yeah. I see. Hey, Ellie.
Say hi. Can you say hi? Hi.
I'm bumping up against my hard stop. Laura, is there anything else you need me for?
No, there is nothing. I think actually we're at the end of the meeting. So
Can I add one?
Jude.
We can't see.
Yeah, I want to call your attention. I don't know whether you read it, but I sent an email. I'm going to be resigning from the Conservation Commission as of September 1st. I've spent 17 years doing this, and I think it's time for somebody new to come in. And I moved to Williston on September 1st, 22 years ago, so I thought it was a good time. So if you know of anybody who's interested and you think they have, really good background that could be added to the spectrum that we already have, I would suggest that you let them know. I've talked with Eric already, so he will be posting that.
yeah, thank you, Jude.
Yeah, thanks for all your hard work.
Jude, I have a parting request from you. Do you think you could post to Front Porch Forum, just soliciting to the community and maybe saying a few words about what it's been like to serve and that the town will be looking?
Sure. I'll check with Eric to see what, when he will have it posted. And then I'll put something in Front Porch Forum.
Jude, I wanted to thank you for all your contributions. You've been a really strong asset to the commission, and you've just done so much over the last 17 years for the Conservation Commission, and for, I know that you served on the town plan
mobility and
committees, and that's been a really great contribution, and I've really appreciated having you on the commission.
Thank you. I actually started volunteering with the town 3 weeks after we moved here. So that's 22 years ago. And then did the library trustee thing too. So I think I need some time for the want-tos in my life. It's very, very busy life when you're taking care of everything yourself. And I know that the background of everybody on this Conservation Commission makes it probably the most thorough background, comprehensive background of anything that I could imagine. So I'm sure everything will proceed. Of course, I'll pay attention to what you're doing.
Mhm.
I'd also like to second the appreciation, Jude. You have been, for the 17 years you've been on the commission, extraordinarily thoughtful, steady, and reliable member. And we will miss you.
I was thinking the other day that the only meetings I missed were when I was in the hospital. So other than
I was
that,
going to say, you're about our most reliable attendee.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think you were trying to beat Carl out, but he just never seems like he's going to give up. So at some point you have to
well,
exit the race.
he's the treasurer. That's a very important role.
Oh boy, the end of an era.
Thank you so much, Jude.
Thank
And
you.
maybe we can do something in person once this all is settled down.
I have to
Oh.
chuckle that now they're planning, I think it's September 8th.
Yes.
September 8th.
Meeting with other things. I have
Yeah.
been thinking about that and mentioning it periodically for 17 years.
And now it's finally happening.
Right, and I
Well,
will.
there's our opportunity.
Jude, you should still come, even though you will have resigned. You should still come.
Well, I'm very, very proud of Williston and what we've accomplished. And I know when I've gone to conferences, we always stand out because we're always well ahead of the game. So look at Carl and Gary. They've been on longer than I have. Carl, I think, was born on it, but so in any event, you'll still have history. I'm sure of that. And Laura's been such an amazing addition too.
Oh,
So sure you can find, if you can find somebody like Laura to add on, it'll be a even better commission.
thank you, Jude. We're going to miss you.
And Reed has the inside scoop since she's already on the call.
Yeah.
Get that application in.
All right. Well, thank you. And hope to see you on September 8th, Jude. And if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn, we can end the meeting.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those all those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Okay. Anyone opposed? All right. The meeting has been adjourned.
Goodbye, everyone.
See ya.
Stay well.
You too.